Hi, I'm Doug McKinlay and you're watching Adorama TV. So, this is our third and final episode in our series about what it's like for a working professional photographer to cobble together a story for a glossy London magazine. Now, not long ago, I was commissioned by London Magazine to do a photo spread on Valletta, the capital city of Malta, the island nation in the middle of the Mediterranean Sea. Along with another European city, Valletta has been designated as this year's European Capital of Culture, and that's the hook, the reason for the story. Now, the job is done and dusted, but I find it really educational to go back and see what I did to get that job done. The pros and the cons, the successes and the failures, because I think it's really educational that you go back and look at your mistakes, because that's the only way you're going to improve as a photographer. Now, a major change in this job occurred once I got back from Malta. I got an email from the editor asking if I could write the copy as well as submit the pictures. On the surface, it looks like a big spanner in the works, but it's not really. And it's more work for me for sure, but I also get more money. So that's the way things have been going in the last few years. Now, me as a person who's able to write as well as take the pictures keeps the whole package together, and it makes a commissioning editor's job a little easier and improves the scope of work for me. At about this point in my personal debrief of the story, I make a little checklist of things that went right and things that didn't go so right. Now, at the top of that checklist is always attitude. Was I present in the moment when I was doing the job? Now, you might ask, well, you get to go to some really cool places around the world. Why wouldn't you be present? It's not that simple, though, because sometimes I do back-to-back jobs and I get tired like everybody else. And that's when I can take my eye off the ball. That's when the pictures really suffer. And I can tell as soon as I get home, when I download those cards onto my computer, I can look at the pictures and they might look flat, boring, uninteresting, and I know then that my attitude was wrong. But fortunately for Malta, I was pretty much there. So the pictures are actually quite nice. I quite like them. Now, the biggest drag on that job was the weather. Now, I might have gone on about the weather before, a little bit, but in those situations, you've got to dig deep into your energy reserves and try to find those moments when you can go out and get those images. So you have to be on the ball all the time, and that too can be really tiring. Planning is a really important part of the job. As a matter of fact, it can be the making or breaking of a job. Having said that, though, after all these years of doing this and planning, I don't think I've ever had a plan that's come together 100%. I don't think it's actually possible. Like, for instance, this recent job in Malta, the ghost in the machine there was the weather, especially the wind. It had such a negative impact on the ferry service between Malta, the big island, and Gozo, the smaller island, that I didn't think I was going to get there. So I had to change my plan. I had to think on my feet. And that's the whole nature of the plan. You have to be flexible in your plan. So it can't be so constrained that you're stuck in it and you can't get out of it. And that's the goal. That's, for me, is the goal. Flexibility, but knowing where I'm going as well. Now, a lot of things you can do from home, things like opening times for venues, transportation links and costs, routes, all that kind of thing. Can I use a tripod? All that stuff can be done on the computer at home. But you have to think, though, that once you get on the ground, that whole thing can become a bit of a crapshoot, because what's on a computer doesn't necessarily relate to what's on the ground. It's really important on jobs to take proper notes. Now, I carry these little elasticated booklets, and 2 or 3 usually, and depending on the job, I might fill up 1, 2, or 3, and they're quite cheap and they're nice and small. Now, what they do for you is, when you're taking good notes, is they give you all that caption information right at your fingertips. So you can write down all the names of places and get them spelled correctly, people spelled correctly, names of local dishes, food dishes, spelled correctly. It's one of those things they teach you when you first go to journalism school. They teach you how to take notes. And then they teach you how to take shorthand, which some get better than others. I get about half of it, but it still comes in handy. So you have to really, really, really be disciplined when it comes to taking your notes. Even when you don't feel like doing it, you got to break out the notebook and you got to start writing. Now, this last job in Malta, because the weather was so inclement then and unpredictable, and I wasn't sure if I was going to get enough images, I took a lot of notes with the idea that maybe I'd use them somewhere later. I didn't really know. And as it turned out, when I got back to London, I got a an email from the editor asking me to write the copy. And because I had, I think, 2 and a bit books of notes, I was completely covered. I'd like to mention something here that is so crucial to good photojournalism, and that's interaction. I think non-photography people think that we just slap a long lens on a camera body and just snipe people from a distance. It's not true. I'm sure, of course, we use long lenses occasionally, but what we want really to bring across is that interaction between the photographer and their subjects, to be part of it, to be human. So it's really important for me to work in close environments. Those are the kind of pictures I like the most. They're the ones I like to look at, and the ones I like to take. So I use the shorter lenses and get right in there. And you can really, for me, good photography is when I can look at an image and I can tell the photographer is actually part of that scene. You may not see the photographer, but they are part of the scene. There's a real connection there, and that's what I want to see. Turning to mistakes and fixes. Well, this job was pretty good. I didn't really make that many mistakes. Now, if I'm guilty of one thing, it's I occasionally forget to pay attention to my shutter speeds. I get caught up in the moment, and all the stuff's happening around me, and if the light changes quickly, I might not notice the shift in the speed, especially if the light comes down. Now, normally I shoot in manual, so you have to be moving your fingers pretty quickly, but for some reason I have this little mental block occasionally where I tend not to look at my shutter speeds, so I can get soft images when I really don't want them. Now, it's a pretty simple fix, really. So you gotta pay attention to your surroundings, keep notice of what's happening in terms of the light, and I'll switch to shutter priority. If there's things in the picture I want to freeze the action, then I'll switch to shutter priority, and then I will adjust the ISO up if I have to, and in that way I should, and I will, get the speed I need to freeze the action. It's a pretty simple fix. You just gotta pay attention. So this is the magazine that the Malta piece is published in. But before I get to that, I just got a small piece of advice for people who are pursuing the writer-photographer or photographer-writer angle. Now, that advice is pretty simple. When you're writing copy, you've got to write copy to your pictures. You want them to work together in sync. So when you send that package into an editor, that they can look at that copy and they can see that you've got all the pictures that match that copy, and then they don't have to go outside the commission to find images that they feel you've missed. So it's really important that you try to think of them in tandem, that one can't survive without the other. Now, I've had this happen before where I've sent in a bunch of photographs to a magazine or a newspaper, and generally when it happens, I'm not the one writing the copy. I'm taking the photographs for somebody else, and they might look at that copy and go, oh, you know, you missed something. We want to try and find that picture somewhere else. Now, generally the reason why that happens is because me and the writer weren't talking enough. We weren't communicating enough to try and match up our copy with the photographs, and that's really important that you do this. So keep that in mind. So overall, it went really well, even if I was fighting the weather the whole time I was there. Now, I'd been before, so I had a really great set of backup pictures, you know, just in case. Fortunately, though, I didn't have to delve into those. Also, I was working with an editor here in London who's really laid back, and she allowed me to pursue the story as I saw fit. Now, that doesn't happen all the time. You can trust me on that. As for the layout, well, it was 6 pages, and 6 pages is a pretty good show in most magazines. The only concern I had, though, was there wasn't enough people in the pictures. Now, I'm a photojournalist. I want to see people in my pictures. But then again, I'm not the layout guy. But still, though, it was a good gig, and I was glad to do it. So that's it. I'm Doug McKinlay for Adorama TV. And don't forget, you can join Adorama TV, and you can tell us what you think. You can like, comment, or share this video, and please stop by the Adorama Learning Center for more great tips and tricks.